Welcome back to the Flying with the Flock podcast, best place to get all of your Eagles and other NFL related news. I'm your host, Matt, and welcome to episode 66, ladies and gentlemen, in which we will cover a litany of different NFL topics, some Eagles news that I want to talk about, and how all the AFC teams can improve this offseason. But before we jump into it, if you all could leave a like and subscribe down below, that would be much appreciated. Your support does not go unnoticed here on this channel, and I'm continuing to figure ways to improve the podcast for your guys' enjoyment. Alright, now that you did that, and now that I'm done yapping about that, this week, there is some news. Other news is kind of dry because we're at the Combine. It will be this upcoming week that we'll get a ton of crazy news about trades, possibly. There was one trade between the Titans and the Jets. They were both trading kind of like iffy players, so we're not really going to be talking about that. There's a lot of A.J. Brown stuff that I can touch on. But I'm only really talking about one thing, one storyline that came out of it all that kind of impacts the future of the Eagles. And yeah, but before we jump into anything Eagles related and all my thoughts about the people that they're interviewing at the Combine, the trends of that, the things that they've accidentally admitted during interviews at the Combine, whether it's with the regular Philly media or with on television as well with Florio or Eisen. Let's jump into some smaller NFL stuff. So let's get into this first. So Kyle Pitts, we did talk about Kyle Pitts last week. He was quote unquote rumored to the Eagles. And obviously, I was not buying that because it was just some random guy in New York that has no ties to Philly or Atlanta saying that, ooh, Kyle Pitts is a good chance of going to Philly. And it's like, okay, sure. Well, Kyle Pitts officially has been franchise tagged by the Falcons. What does that mean? That means for the next year, the Falcons still own his rights as a player, and they will also be paying him like a top tight end on the market. So probably roughly around like $22 to $25 million for this upcoming season. Kyle Pitts has been one of the more interesting characters, you could say, in the NFL. He was taken in the top 10 back in, I think it was 2022. And ultimately, it was interesting because he was a very raw talent, and Atlanta is historically known for not being able to develop guys correctly. And so I was definitely concerned when it came to whether Kyle Pitts was going to grow as a player there in Atlanta, and basically 3 coaching regime changes later. And now we have our answer, and that answer is no. So why tag him and not just let him walk and draft a tight end in this draft, which the tight end group in this draft is very deep, and we'll get into how that impacts the Eagles moving forward. But why not just let Kyle Pitts walk? Well, Kevin Stefanski, the new head coach of the Falcons, his scheme heavily relies on an athletic pass catcher at the tight end position. Obviously, that was seen with David Njoku the past couple of seasons. And so Kyle Pitts is just that. Now with a head coach that likes to use the tight end a heavy amount in their offensive scheme, not just with blocking, but pass catching, we could see Kyle Pitts start to come out of his shell underneath an offensive guy who knows what he's doing. He was able to produce several playoff berths for Cleveland out of all cities, which is a damn near miracle. And so seeing a guy like Kyle Pitts actually getting a head coach that believes in him told the front office, I need him for what I want to build here, is nice. Now the problem comes in, who's going to throw to Kyle Pitts? Because the Falcons, and this is already a news point, but we can talk about them since we're already on the Falcons, is that they are planning on cutting Kirk Cousins the first day of the new league year, meaning that he will become a free agent, and he will ultimately join the likes of Malik Willis and who's the other one? Malik Willis. Well, let's just say Kyler Murray, Tua, and Malik Willis as a possibility for quarterback needy teams to go out and get. So, and obviously with Michael Penix suffering an ACL injury and him being riddled with injuries throughout his collegiate and pro career so far, it's tough to say who Kyle Pitts is going to be catching the ball from. But I guess they're just going to hope that they can bring in a guy like maybe a Cade Klubnik at Clemson, or maybe a guy like Drew Allard from Penn State, to come in and maybe challenge Michael Penix for a starting position and possibly, be the guy. Matt Ryan has become the new head of football operations, or GM, I forget which one. And so a guy like that who's been successful in the NFL at such a difficult position like quarterback, I do trust in his idea when it comes to releasing Kirk Cousins and possibly going into the draft and bringing in a new guy. But again, it still leaves concern for the tight end position that Kyle Pitts has to fill, is who's going to be throwing the ball. And so we will see that plan kind of evolve over the next couple of months until after the draft. We'll know whether the Falcons are committed to Michael Penix or they will bring in a guy to try to challenge him. We'll just have to wait and see. Another player who got the transition tag, which is different from the franchise tag, but the transition tag was George Pickens down in Dallas. Now, the Cowgirls use the transition tag because they own the rights to George Pickens. They still pay him top dollar, but there's a higher probability that they could get 2 first-round picks from Pickens. That's the least they can get from Pickens if they decide to trade him this season. Here is what that means for them boys at this point. Because they decided to do a deal with Javonte Williams, their running back, and not George Pickens, George Pickens will now be able to talk to other teams during free agency, but to get the rights of George Pickens, other teams will have to trade for him. And a guy like George Pickens, there's a solid chance that you could get a couple pretty pennies from a couple struggling teams in the NFL. But ultimately, I still think that George Pickens had an amazing year in the system, but is not worth 2 first rounds. I'm not sure. There might only be 1 or 2 wide receivers I could make the argument that could even come close to 2 first round picks in that kind of same vein as a dynamic playmaker. And George Pickens is not one of those 2. And so, moving forward, George Pickens has already been reported to say that he's ready to hold out, if that means that's going to get him the money. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get another Micah Parsons 2.0 situation here, where Pickens holds out, hopefully just hopes for a deal, and there's a certain point that once Pickens holds out till, that he's ineligible to play for the season. So I believe that Pickens could go up to a certain point to where he's willing to just hold out and then miss the rest of the season and then get a bag next offseason. And that's just an interesting move. I've never seen a guy do that before. But I wouldn't be surprised if he pulled this off. Being George Pickens, it's not surprising. And so the Cowboys and the Jones family are in for a headache this offseason when it comes to George Pickens, and possibly PTSD for what happened to the Micah Parsons situation. Micah Parsons elevated that team, especially that defense, very high, and now with him gone, that defense is horrible. Maybe the same thing happens with Pickens. Hell, CeeDee Lamb was very iffy with his health this past season, though I don't guarantee that every season. I can still see a situation where, with the lack of Pickens and a lack of him getting the money that he deserves after this season, because don't get me wrong, he deserves a lot of money for what he was able to pull off down in Dallas. I could see a situation where the offense could take a step back. And so that just puts Dallas really in this tricky position where they need to draft a guy at the very least, maybe in the second or third round, to bring in alongside of possibly Pickens and CD, but at least to help out CeeDee Lamb immediately. And Dak Prescott, obviously. So we're going to have to wait and see how this George Pickens situation develops. Micah should be an indication of where this possible situation will go. Eventually, a team will probably be willing to pay the price. But to me, it's just outrageous, the 2 first-round picks. That's insane for a wide receiver at this point. And so, yeah, we're going to have to wait and see what happens with Dallas. But Dallas is in a kind of a shit mess moving forward, which is always fun to watch, but it's always hard to keep track of. The last other NFL story I want to touch on was the salary cap got raised to over $301 million. This is an increase of $22 million from last year. The NFL realistically has been dominating the sports world business-wise. Let's be honest. The NBA is doing the worst that it's ever has over the past year or two. And it's becoming kind of a joke. The MLB, it's been good. Their commissioner has been horrible. And business-wise, they really just have Shohei Ohtani, dominating. And that's really it. They just bring him out, every couple of weeks and put him back away. And there's no parity in the league anymore as well. And NHL, to me, is the next closest. They've been growing significantly with broadcasting deals and such, but they don't have quite the base in America that they have in Canada. And obviously, America is the bigger market that the NHL wants to thrive in. Realistically, out of the big four, the NFL continues to be the most lucrative for businesses to advertise in, for kids to try to get into for careers. And so we could see a continuous shift towards the NFL becoming the top dog and staying there. People have tried to say, oh yeah, basketball is going to challenge football moving forward. The NBA is one of the worst positions out of all four of the big four leagues at this point. And so with the MLB constantly trending down over the past decade, and the NHL not being anywhere close to equipped to challenge the NFL, I think it's safe to assume that football is going to be the dominant sport in America for at least the next decade. Okay, moving on to some Eagles news. With the Combine here, it has allowed for a lot of different stuff to kind of shake up. Some insiders to actually get a look into what the Eagles are trying to do, both in the front office, coaching area, and player personnel. So, since the Combine has begun, there have been rumors that the Eagles are now unlikely to resign Goddard. Obviously, last week I made the case for why Goddard should come back and why the Eagles should bring him back. But now, with this tight end draft being very deep, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Eagles let Dallas Goedert walk. Like I just said, draft is deep at the tight end position. Goddard's 31 years of age this upcoming season. He's injury prone. Yes, not this past season, but almost every other season he has missed some time. He's still not the best blocking tight end in the world. He's good, but not great. And so it kind of just leads to this combination of different things coming together to make it look unlikely that Goddard will resign. Obviously, personally, behind Jalen Phillips, I want Goddard to resign. But looking at it now, it really does look unlikely. Obviously, in a couple of weeks, we will know whether the Eagles are able to re-sign him, because it was kind of admitted by Howie Roseman that over the next 10 days, we will kind of see how the Eagles' internal free agent re-signings will shape out, who's going to be coming back and who's going, and then the free agency will be how do they plug those holes somewhat. The Eagles' top priorities to re-sign their internal free agents has to be Jaelan Phillips. I mean, I've already heard that Jaelan Phillips is asking for roughly around $22 million a year, probably on a 3 to 4 year contract. And so that would already be pushing up to most of the Eagles' money this offseason. Obviously, they can probably open up a little bit more with extending Jordan Davis, which is a move that everybody's kind of expecting. It will most likely be like the Cam Jurgens move last offseason, where everybody was expecting it for the longest time, and then it weirdly didn't happen, and then a month later, it did. And so, don't be surprised if we see that kind of scenario happen again for Jordan Davis, which then opens up access for Jaelan Phillips to get the money that he's looking for. Phillips was phenomenal. Would I personally want to pay $22 million? No. I would be willing to pay closer to $16 to $18 million a year. But we're going to have to wait and see what Howie does. Nakobe Dean is most likely going to walk. People are probably going to throw a lot of money at him. Same thing for Reed Blankenship. A couple of these big pieces are most likely going to walk because a lot of these guys are just going to get a crap ton of money thrown at them. And so right now, to me, Jaelan Phillips seems to be Howie Roseman's big first move. And that should be coming in the next couple of days. If you remember, Zach Bond was that same move that last offseason. And so we're going to have to wait and see how much they actually start dishing out to these internal free agents. But to me, guys like Jaelan Phillips, possibly Dallas Goedert, depending on how things play out, are most likely to stay, while guys like Nakobe Dean and Reed Blankenship are probably going to take a hike somewhere else. Oh, and Jordan Davis with the guys that are going to stay. Another interesting story. So this is the last time I'm going to be talking about A.J. Brown, unless something actually happens. But Sean Mannion, the story about Sean Mannion came out during this combine from some Eagles insiders. And it was that Sean Mannion needs A.J. Brown for the offense that he pitched during his interview process to Howie and Sirianni. Again, let's go over it. Mannion's style is more of a West Coast offense, relying on a solid run game, but then also heavily relying on the play action game to open up. And so you're going to need top tier wide receivers that can run clean routes, be where the quarterback is on the back of their drop step, so he can just deliver it in the bucket. And so, yes, Mannion is probably going to take some ideas of what has worked for this offense over the past 3-4 seasons. But I still think that he's still going to use what he knows. And that being that West Coast style drop back play action. And we're going to see guys like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith possibly take a step forward in the receiving game and not just barely struggle to get over 1,000 receiving yards during a season. And that's kind of it for the Eagles news. So this next segment is going to be about every AFC team and what they need to do to improve this offseason. I'm going to be going division by division. And right now, we are going to be starting in the AFC East. Alright, so let's start with the reigning AFC champions, that being the New England Patriots. And to me, if the Super Bowl was not a good idea of what they need, then we're kind of blind. The Patriots obviously need offensive line, especially interior. Now, guys like Will Campbell did get ripped on the days following the Super Bowl. But to me, they need depth and they need talent at the offensive line. There are guys like Linderbaum out there at center who would be an amazing pickup for the Patriots, who have a good amount of cap room to work with. And so, with the Patriots continuing to develop Drake May, but also keeping him safe behind a solid offensive line should be their top priority moving forward. I don't have the statistics, but I know their pressure rate, especially throughout the playoffs, was quite high, which is what led to poor quarterback play from Drake May during the playoffs. And obviously, to me, Drake May was a shell of himself during the playoffs, and I wouldn't be surprised that the poor offensive line play was a major factor of why. On top of that, a secondary need would probably be somebody at receiver. Obviously, wide receiver is going to be a major need probably in the draft. I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots get a guy in the late first round or second round that can come in and be a dynamic playmaker to pair alongside Drake May. And if I'm them, I trade up high into the second round, or I trade back into the second round from the first round in order to get Drake May some pieces to play around. Next up is the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are in an interesting situation. They have their franchise quarterback. He's proven to be a winner, winning the 2024 MVP. And he's constantly been able to get the Bills deep into the playoffs. The problem is that they're never able to build a team around Josh Allen. Allen just continues to struggle deep into the playoffs. Lacks a good wide receiver, though that's not really what I'm going to touch on here. I want to touch on their defense. Yes, it was better this season, but it was not that great. The addition of Joey Bosa was a really sneaky move. He was able to stay healthy, and he helped dominate on the NFL offensive, on the Bills' defensive line. And so, really taking a big picture at it, I believe that the Bills need a lot of youth in their defense because a lot of their older pieces continue to get injured during the middle of the season, and then the Bills continue to struggle. If they're going to want to make another run, they need to revitalize this defense and bring it up to Kansas City, which is kind of funny because they did not do that good, but their defense was still good. A Denver, a Baltimore, a few of these teams that just had really good defense. A New England. They need to bring in a guy, especially maybe through the draft, bring in a guy that can come in and dominate off the edge. Maybe, I don't know how far Sonny Styles, an edge rusher, is being projected right now in the in mock drafts and such, but he would not be a bad guy to pick up. This is a deep draft at edge rusher, and I would not be surprised to see the Bills subscribe to that position in the first round of this year's draft. Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins are in an interesting situation. To me, one of their bigger needs, it's not the biggest, but one of their bigger needs is to get Tua's contract off the books. Tua will constrict what they're able to do with their team over the next couple of years, and so getting rid of a guy like Tua and his contract to name a place, and he could be traded there, let's just say for sake of argument, he gets traded to a team with a high cap hit or has a lot of cap space. The Dolphins will then be able to unload that contract for the most part without eating too much dead money, while also being able to start to give money to guys that deserve it, like Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle. Similar to the Bills, their major thing is going to be defense moving forward. Obviously, they bring in a defensive-minded head coach in Hafley to start building up this Finns defense, and so they need similar to the Bills, they need a youth movement at the defensive position. Doing that, bringing in a couple of these top-tier defensive freaks in the draft, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Dolphins take a guy like Ruben Bain Jr. Now, Ruben Bain, during the regular season, was projected to go quite high in the NFL draft. But since the Super Bowl, it feels like, he's continued to slide down draft boards, and I would not be surprised if the Dolphins keep the Miami native in Miami in order to start to build up this defense again. Again, look at the Dolphins to take defense early and often, seeing the success of Seattle and seeing the success of obviously Green Bay, which is where their new head coach was from. I would not be surprised if the Dolphins start to focus more on defense than offense, but they will still need probably a quarterback because Quinn Ewers is not the answer. Next up, you have the New York Jets. Now, the Jets are in such a horrible situation. They fired almost all of their coaching staff, and so it's really funny to me. They are stuck with Justin Fields for another 2 years, I feel like. And they owe him, I think, probably another $20 million guaranteed. They need a guy at quarterback. They continue to struggle at the quarterback position. And yes, I could talk about their defense. Because obviously they have Aaron Glenn, former defensive coordinator of the Lions. But Aaron Glenn, I feel like, will find a way to coach up this defense and will focus on a lot of defensive picks in the draft. But when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, they have Breece Hall. They have Garrett Wilson. They have pieces. They have an okay offensive line. I wouldn't mind if they injected some youth into that. But they need a quarterback. Justin Fields, Tyrod Taylor, or Brady Cook are not gonna cut it as a franchise guy. So, to me, the Jets need a franchise guy. I don't care if it's a veteran. If you bring in a guy like Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr, bring in one of these two guys. Obviously, one is still retired and has flirted with coming back out. Obviously, Kirk will be cut during the new league year. And so if you bring in a veteran guy, maybe you take a shot on a guy in the draft in the third or fourth round, a guy that you think maybe could be good. Maybe take a shot on a guy like Carson Beck, who could be taken in the fourth round. We're going to have to wait and see how the Jets kind of approach the offseason, whether they bring in a veteran quarterback or whether they try to run it back with Justin Fields, which to me would be a major mistake and would possibly lead to Aaron Glenn being fired during the regular season. But we're going to have to wait and see what happens with the New York Jets. Next up, we're going to go a little bit south here. We're going to go to the division winner of the NFC South, that being the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars, to me, they have quite a few guys possibly walking in this offseason. Possibly Travis Etienne, possibly one of their corners. And so their defense is going to be losing quite a few holes. So to me, they need to bring in guys throughout free agency that could fill up some of those holes. Bring in a Tariq Woolen. Bring in possibly a Denzel Ward if he gets cut as a cap casualty. And just continue to try to develop guys like Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. Obviously, they announced that Travis Hunter this upcoming season will now switch and be more of a permanent corner, which is to me, Travis Hunter, the corner, was way better than Travis Hunter, the wide receiver. But they will put Travis Hunter at corner almost full-time while having him play in certain packages on offense as wide receiver. And so, using that, they can kind of go about their business, find ways to plug holes in this already pretty formidable defense in Jacksonville, and figure out a way to try to get Trevor Lawrence to up his game further than he already has. I believe that the Jaguars will become one of the top teams in the NFL this upcoming season, obviously depending on what they do during free agency, don't get me wrong. But I do feel like the Jaguars have a shot at being a top-tier team this upcoming season, based off of revitalizing their defense once again. Next up, we got the Houston Texans. Now, the Texans have a lot of questions. Their defense is not one of them, but they are losing some pieces on defense. And so, to me, it would be important for them to re-sign all their defensive free agents. That is going to be their top thing that they need to do. Behind that, we'll be getting an offensive line for C.J. Stroud. Now, a lot of people are questioning whether C.J. Stroud is the guy. And to me, C.J. Stroud had an amazing rookie season and has not really done too much since, but he's been to the playoff every single season of his career. And he's looked okay when he's had time in the pocket. But that's where the problem comes in, is that he needs time in the pocket. The Texans, I believe, are going to be tight on the cap, and so it's going to be rough for them to sign a whole lot of external free agents to bring in for the offensive line. But maybe take a flyer on a guy that's proven to be successful in the past, like Mekhi Becton. Bring him in, bolster this offensive line at whatever guard position that you need, and then continue to build throughout the draft. There are quite a few solid offensive line pieces, whether at tackle or in the interior. But first off, before we can start questioning whether C.J. Stroud is a guy, they absolutely need to protect him by building up the offensive line. Next up is the Indianapolis Colts, and the Colts already have some movement on their side. Anthony Richardson, taken in the same draft, so just give me a break here. Anthony Richardson has already requested a trade from the team, and the team has allowed him to seek a trade, and so he's gone. They are most likely going to bring back Daniel Jones, whether that's him signing a long-term contract or the team franchise tagging him for this upcoming season. Obviously, he doesn't want to play on that, but he might have to no matter what. And so, to me, they need to get some depth. As soon as guys started to go down, it did not look that good, especially on offense. They're going to be losing probably Michael Pittman in the draft, in free agency, and so they should probably pick up a dynamic playmaker in the draft. There are quite a few in this year's draft, and so I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Colts take a wide receiver in the first or second round here to help pair alongside a guy like Alec Pierce, or the guy that they got from... Or did they send a guy to the Jets? Either way, whoever they have in that wide receiver room, it would be imperative for them to pair a younger guy with that wide receiver room. On top of that, that offensive line played amazing. Jonathan Taylor played amazing. Maybe bringing some youth into that defense is probably needed, because I believe the average age for them is roughly like 29.4 years of age on that defense. And so moving forward, the Colts need to get younger on that defense, and especially on the defensive line. They need guys like Cameron Latu, taken in the 2023 draft, to kind of start to... or 2024 draft. I might have been 2024 draft, to start to shape up and start to clean up their game a little bit and start to break out here. But we're going to have to wait and see whether they're able to develop some of these younger pieces on defense and whether they're able to start to rebuild through the draft. But wide receiver and youth on defense are the two top spots for the Colts. And last up, the Tennessee Titans kind of already got what they needed, which was a solid coaching staff. But really taking a look at it, they need wide receiver. They are projected by many to take a wide receiver in the first round at pick number 5. And so the Titans, to me, it would make sense for them to take a wide receiver then, but it would also make sense to bring in a lot of offensive line help. Cam Ward looked pretty good for his first season. I would like to see him have more time in the pocket and not have to escape it 2 seconds after having the ball snapped. And so a guy like that, a big guy, maybe an offensive tackle. There are two top guys like Fano or Manunga'u, who I feel like, or Manungai, but whatever. One of those two offensive tackles, I feel it could also be good at pick number 5, but they need to start building through the draft. Robert Saleh will probably take a lot of defensive guys as well, but to me right now, the prime focus has to be building around Cam Ward and his future. Next up is the AFC North. Starting at the division winner Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steelers still have quite a few question marks, and it's being reported that Aaron Rodgers will know his decision by mid-March of whether he wants to return to play football or not. And then they also have to ask the question, is that with the Steelers or is that with a team like the Vikings, who he was also rumored to be in talks with last offseason, who also probably need a quarterback. And so, looking at it right now, their biggest need is going to be finding a franchise guy. They've struggled to do that since Ben Roethlisberger retired, and so Kenny Pickett wasn't the answer. Aaron Rodgers was good. I forget who they've had in between Kenny Pickett and Aaron Rodgers. Oh, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, both of which were not the answer. And so, moving forward, the Pittsburgh Steelers need to start building up a new era of Steelers football. Need to start injecting more youth into this defense. There's too many aging stars with Cameron Hayward and T.J. Watt. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them go young with a couple draft picks here to fill out some depth on the defensive line, but also start to focus on a lot of offensive weapons to put alongside guys like DK Metcalf. They need to focus on running back too. I wouldn't be surprised if they take a running back in round 3 or round 4. So keep your eyes out for running backs that the Steelers have interviewed. Next up, we got the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens obviously bringing in a new head coach similar to the Steelers. This guy, though, is more defensive-minded when all things shake out. And Jesse Minter is going to look to continue to revitalize this defense to play alongside Lamar. Lamar also need weapons. I wouldn't be surprised if they take a wide receiver in round 2 or try to trade up into late round 1 and take a receiver there. And so the Ravens both need wide receiver, because Zay Flowers is good, but Zay Flowers alone is not that good. And they need to start to revitalize his defensive line, in my opinion. It's starting to get a little bit old at a couple positions, especially on edge rusher. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the Ravens take edge rusher in the first round and wide receiver in the second. Because to me, the Ravens, moving forward, kind of need to focus on the same positions that most other people do as well. And so they need to try to get the best out of Lamar, and if that means getting him new weapons, that means getting him some of the best weapons and cheapest weapons in the draft. Next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bengals are in an interesting position where, to me, they are alongside the Jets in NFL purgatory. Well, no, the Jets are in NFL hell. The Bengals are definitely in purgatory. The Bengals have a lot of money tied up in some of their top offensive guys, and so that becomes a problem. They don't have enough money to start spreading it around. And so there have even been rumors, now I don't know the validity to them, but do they even trade Joe Burrow or a guy like T. Higgins this offseason? Or do they just try to ride it out with their main trio? Either way, they need a better offensive line to kind of shore up Joe Burrow and his protection. They need running back because as good as Chase Brown is, he's not dynamic enough to really make a difference in the backfield. And then they need to continue to build up defense. They're probably going to lose Trey Hendrickson. He's probably going to walk. And so in the end of the day, I still feel like the Bengals might be on a downward slope now. Yes, they got dynamic guys that they could possibly go out there and win with, but you need more than one, 2 or 3 dynamic guys to make a football team. And so, unless they start to focus on building up in the trenches on both sides of the ball, which is to me their biggest need, then I possibly see the Bengals taking a massive nosedive moving forward in the NFL. Next up, we have the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are such an interesting situation that their GM has already talked about possibly drafting another quarterback when they already have Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, and Dylan Gabriel on the roster. And so to me, the Browns need a reality check. Is realistically what they need. They need to find a way to develop one of these guys under new head coach Todd Monken, and then they need to continue to maintain this devastating defense that they have, which could win them games. And so they need to find a quarterback out of the 3 that they have and decide which one is not going to lose us the game. Once they decide who that is, because I'm not going to say who that is. I don't know who it is. A lot of people will say it's Shedeur. I don't 100% believe that. I don't believe in Deshaun Watson either. I feel like Dylan Gabriel might be the guy, but the Browns have to give them a solid chance. They can't just have this rotating cast of guys and constantly keep plugging them in every other game. And so, to me, the Browns need a reality check on their current situation, especially at the quarterback position. And if I'm being serious, probably a weapon or 2 for whatever quarterback they have playing this season. And so we move on to our last division. We are moving on to the AFC West. We're starting with the division winner, Denver Broncos. And the Broncos, to me, need to just keep Bo Nix healthy. This defense is one of the best in the NFL and one of the best I've seen in a while. Ever since the 2024 Eagles defense, which was insane. And so the Broncos, moving forward, need to focus on keeping Bo Nix healthy. Bringing in more weapons for Bo Nix. Yes, Courtland Sutton's fine. Marvin Mims is fine. But you need just this out-of-this-world receiver. Or this out-of-this-world tight end. And so, to me, their big focus, besides keeping Bo Nix healthy, is going to be focusing on tight end, which is a deep tight end draft, and wide receiver as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them target 1 or 2 of these positions in the first round and then target the other in the second round. Obviously, depth at O-line and D-line never hurts for their kind of mentality as well. So we're going to have to wait and see how they kind of pivot with that. But do not be surprised if the Broncos target tight end in free agency and the draft as their biggest need. Next up, we got the... this graphic that I'm using to help me sort out the divisions has it as the San Diego Chargers. We have the Los Angeles Chargers here. And to me, the biggest thing that the Chargers need is quite obvious. It's similar to the Patriots. It's O-line, 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 Jesus Christ, O-line. They had the 32nd ranked offensive line in the league, and Justin Herbert probably lost a couple of years off his life because of that. He nearly got killed in several different games this past season, and it's because of how horrible this defensive line was. And so, offensive line, excuse me. And so, offensive line is going to be a major need. Yes, they're going to be getting Joe Alt and their other tackle back, which will be nice to help flesh out that offensive line, but the interior needs to be revamped. And they need depth as well. You can't just have your starting 5. You need to have a couple of solid guys behind them as well. And so, to me, the Chargers' biggest need is to somehow convince the UN to convict their offensive line with war crimes against humanity. Next up is the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs need a lot. They need offensive line, but to change it up so you're not hearing me say offensive line again, we're going to say they're going to need defensive edge. Edge was a major problem for the Chiefs this past season, and the reason is they really only have Karlaftis coming off the edge there, and he kind of took a step back this past season. So securing a solid rookie edge in the draft, or two, would be a solid move. Kansas City could also look for some depth and maybe a young rookie tight end to put behind Travis Kelce. There's been rumors that Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon, could be taken in the first round by the Chiefs. But to me, edge rusher is a major point of importance for the Chiefs moving forward and fleshing out their defense. Their defense used to be something to fear. Now it's kind of laughable when you take a look at it. So I think for the Chiefs moving forward, they need to focus on defensive edge and maybe the defensive line as a whole, revamping it, revitalizing it, and rejuvenating it. Lastly, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Raiders need to focus on one thing: building a solid roster around Fernando Mendoza. Obviously, it's out there that Fernando Mendoza is going number 1 overall, and the Raiders are the ones sitting there as of right now, and so to me, they need to use their ton of cap space to lure some top free agents, whether it's Linderbaum at center, bring in possibly a couple guys at tackle, add some depth to that offensive line, bring in a couple of defensive studs like Nakobe Dean or Reed Blankenship, and then also focus on bringing in some weapons. Maybe bring in a Romeo Doubs. Maybe draft a couple guys. Maybe draft Pons, the wide receiver from Indiana, to come in and play with Mendoza once again. And so to me, the Raiders need to focus on building around Mendoza. And that's not even a question. If you take a look at it, from year 1 to year 2, Caleb Williams, they did not build the team around him. In year 2, they did, and he looked arguably like an MVP candidate at the end of the season. And so with that, the Raiders, to me, need to automatically, before Mendoza gets in there, build the team around him. Clint Kubiak is a solid guy to bring in at head coach, and his offensive system will help bring Fernando Mendoza to a pro-style offense. And so they've already kind of started the process in my eyes. But as of right now, once free agency hits, they need to bring in some of the top free agents to build around Mendoza with. And so that's it for this episode of the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. I quite enjoyed making this episode. And obviously the news is a little bit light. Hopefully we have a little bit more next week. And then the following week, we will be almost right into free agency. And then we'll have a ton of storylines and opinions for you from me coming up. So if you all enjoyed, and if you all listened this far, please leave a like and subscribe again. Follow us on X or Twitter, whatever you call it. And to stay in the loop of what we're moving forward, next week I'm going to be doing the NFC version of this. And that one I'm going to have a lot of fun with. Let me know if you guys like me using some jokes with this segment. And I will certainly be doing that more next week. So, with all that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And remember, go Birds!